What is the latest project you are working right now?
Well, I'm working on three projects, actually. One is about the nature of family. It's a woman who, at the age of 16, got pregnant and gave her child up for adoption and lived her life wondering where that child was. She herself discovers that she is told at 13 that her father is not her real father. And so at the age of 33, she goes out to find her real father. And it's basically how we're all connected and how amazing genetics is, because she never quite felt as if her family represented her. And when she met her biological family, it all fit in. And now she has a relationship with both her child that she gave up for adoption and her biological father. So it's a very interesting, intriguing, there's a lot of drama that happens on the way, but it's a very intriguing view of family and how these days family is defined very differently. You know, her father was a sperm donor, and she has 200 siblings. Anyway, that's one project. The second one is about the amount of young people who commit suicide on college campuses. 1,500 children every year commit suicide, and it's sort of swept under the carpet by the institutions. Jamie Raskin, who's the Democratic senator, his son committed suicide. It's very, very common. And I want to explore the pressures, you know, that these young people go through, the peer pressure, the pressure from the academic institutions. And the young man that I'm targeting, who took his life a few years ago, his godfather was Ray Bradbury, the science fiction writer, and he was grooming him to be an incredible writer, the young boy. His name was Devon. And a couple of days before he committed suicide, he presented a paper to his professor, and his professor, in front of the class, tore it up and threw it in the trash. And so that may have been one of the factors that contributed to his suicide. Yes, and the project I've just finished, I didn't think qualified for the, you know, a bridging the borders sort of theme, but in a way it does, because it's about a songwriter who was one of the founding fathers of the popular song. You've heard of George Gershwin, Cole Porter, Jerome Kern. You have not heard of Jimmy McHugh, but Jimmy McHugh wrote, "I'm in the mood for love. I can't give you anything but love, baby, on the sunny side of the street." And more importantly, he was one of the first people to employ a female lyricist, because up until that point in the 20s, there were only male lyricists, and they became a very famous songwriting team. And he also propelled the career of many Black people. He introduced Duke Ellington when the management at the Cotton Club said that he had no talent. He propelled his career. And he wrote songs for the first all-black show on Broadway called Blackbirds of 1929.
In all of these three, when I'm checking them out, especially because your both future projects, they are a universal subjects. They have universal subjects. They are not only about certain, place in the world. And that makes them exceptionally interesting. Is that what you think too?
Yes, because if you think about my past projects, I filmed in Russia against Putin during, right after the adoption ban. Russia imposed an adoption ban on America when America had been the prime adopters of Russian orphans. I filmed in China, basically decrying Mao's Cultural Revolution and the effect that it had on a woman who emigrated to America, a Chinese American woman, and the effect that it had on her bringing up her daughter. Because as a child, the Chinese woman was forced to have no voice, to be silent. And her daughter growing up in America was very much, me now, I need to say this, and there was a disconnect between them. And yes, I find that universal subjects to me are much more interesting, and I tend to gravitate towards displaced or oppressed people. That's my favorite subject, I championed in To the Moon and Back, I championed a father who was targeted by Putin for leaving his adopted Russian baby in a car, and the child died from heat stroke. In To the Moon and Back, I championed an American father who had adopted a tiny child, a toddler from Russia. And inadvertently, he had left the toddler in the car, and the child had died of heat stroke. It was a pure accident, and it happens very, very often. And Putin targeted this man and put him on his #1 enemy list and made his life hell. So I championed that man to show the public that he was a very decent man, and this was a pure accident. Similarly, with my movie Fatal Distraction, I championed a man who had accidentally left his child in a car, and he was sentenced to life without parole. And to show you the power of a documentary, my film helped persuade the Supreme Court to overturn that murder verdict, and the man will soon be released. I think it's hugely important to give a voice to people who have been silenced. I think it's hugely important, whether it's to do with politics or, as in my case, an injustice in the legal system.
You are a brave filmmaker, because I know in the documentary filmmaking community, a lot of filmmakers sometimes are stopped approaching a certain project, scaring from the reactions from the public, even they believe in that subject.
Yes.
And you've been really brave to bring and talk about a subject that a lot of people just imagine if somebody's child is dying in a car. their parents are criminals.
Well, that was what I set out to dispel with both the movies. If a child dies by drowning in a swimming pool, the whole community comes together to support the parents. If a child dies by being accidentally left in a car and the public just vilify these parents, they make them out to be monsters. And I think they do that because they figure if they're monsters, then I could never accidentally leave my child in a car. They could never leave their child in a car. And it was hugely important to me to show the public that they need to be more sympathetic to these parents and not as judgmental, because it's a huge loss for the parents, and no one can punish them more than they punish themselves for causing the death of their own child.
As far as your project being at the film festivals and all that, what has been the recent, festivals that your films have been attended and seen by the public?
Well, Dances with Films is a festival that I had not been aware of. And I have to say that Dances with Films is an excellent film festival for filmmakers. Why? Because they show absolute support for you. They also show support for the alumni. If you've screened a film with them a few years ago, they seem to have a sense of loyalty because my films have had, very different subjects, and to some festivals, it might not be good for this audience, that particular film. But they have been incredibly loyal and incredibly supportive. It's a filmmakers festival, because so many festivals seem these days to be more about promoting themselves than promoting the filmmakers. And I have to give a big shout out to Dances with Films.